The city stretched far and wide beyond the towering glass walls of Elias Callahan's office. From the 20th floor, it looked almost peaceful, like a world he could shape with just a signature. Behind him, his secretary approached with a folder in hand. "These documents need your approval to initiate the expansion plans for St. Aurelia's new hospital wing," she said softly. Elias didn't turn around. "Just leave them on the desk. I'll look at them later." His fingers brushed down his tie, adjusting it more out of habit than concern. He picked up his briefcase, mind already shifting to the meeting ahead. It was 9:30, and traffic had been kind. Cruising through familiar streets in his BMW, Elias let his thoughts circle the numbers. A $15 million investment, ambitious, bold, and exactly what his construction firm needed. The city's most prestigious medical center was about to become his legacy. At the hospital entrance, Noelle, his longtime assistant, greeted him with her usual brisk tone. "The investors are on the 3rd floor, waiting," she informed him, falling into step beside him. "But Dr. Kellen asked that you first tour the construction zone before the presentation." Elias sighed, his brows drawing together. "Now?" "His request was firm," Noelle replied. "He believes seeing the space will give you the full picture." Elias didn't argue. He simply nodded, albeit reluctantly. "Let's make it quick." The hospital's corridors felt colder than he remembered. Too sterile, too quiet. They passed patients, nurses, and signs pointing in every direction until they arrived at the maternity ward. The scent of antiseptic lingered heavily in the air, bringing with it memories Elias had spent years trying to erase. And then he saw her. Harper. She stood by a crib, gently rocking a baby in her arms. Her hair was pulled back, her uniform crisp, her expression soft and focused on the tiny life she held. For a moment, Elias forgot how to breathe. She hadn't changed. When Harper looked up and met his eyes, time folded in on itself. "Elias," she breathed, holding the infant just a little closer. His voice caught, asked, "Why are you here?" "I work in the neonatal unit," she replied. A stillness settled between them, heavy and unspoken. Noelle, clearly sensing the tension, interrupted. "Mr. Callahan, the meeting." "1 second," Elias said, eyes fixed on Harper. "The child? Is he yours?" Harper shook her head gently. "No. He was left at the hospital's doorstep early this morning." Relief and confusion twisted in Elias's chest. The breath he hadn't realized he was holding escaped him in a slow exhale, but the tightness in his throat remained. 2 years. 2 long years. "Mr. Callahan," Noelle pressed again. Elias hesitated, then looked back at Harper. She had returned her gaze to the child, her expression unreadable. "We need to talk," he said. Her reply came quietly, but without hesitation. "There's nothing left to talk about. Everything was said 2 years ago." He clenched his jaw, but said nothing more. Turning away, he followed Noelle down the hallway, leaving behind a woman he once knew and a silence filled with the weight of things unsaid. The meeting had ended, but Elias's mind remained elsewhere, lost somewhere between the cold corridors of the maternity wing and the warmth in Harper's eyes. "That was a strong presentation," Noelle commented as they exited the boardroom, her tone measured. "Are you all right?" Elias loosened his tie, his voice barely steady. "I need a moment. Where's the restroom?" In the quiet of the washroom, he leaned over the sink, splashing cold water onto his face. The man staring back at him in the mirror didn't look like the confident executive he once knew. He looked tired, haunted. Drying his face with a paper towel, he exhaled slowly, then stepped out with one clear intention. He had to find her. He spotted Harper in the nurse's break room, alone, bent over a stack of paperwork. "Can we talk?" he asked from the doorway. She looked up, the calm in her face slipping. "I'm busy, Elias. Just 5 minutes, please." Harper put her pen down slowly. "What is it you want to discuss? That you vanished after the divorce? Or that you ignored every call when I needed your signature on the legal forms?" Elias sat across from her, eyes heavy with regret. "I know I was a coward, but seeing you today, with that baby—" "Don't," she cut him off. "Don't turn him into a reason to reopen the past." She hesitated, then added, "His name is Lucas. He was abandoned. I'm simply caring for him until the authorities figure out what comes next." "How long have you been working here?" Elias asked quietly. "A year. After I sold the apartment you left behind, I needed a reset. I transferred hospitals, started over." The silence that followed was full, stretched thin by everything unspoken. Do you remember the last time we were in a hospital together? Elias murmured. Harper's lips tightened. Don't go there. It was after our third IVF attempt, he continued, voice fragile. That was the day we lost our baby. And you drowned yourself in work after that, Harper replied, her voice no longer steady, as if building skyscrapers could patch up the hole that child left behind. Harper, no, Elias, I don't need your guilt or your too late apologies. It's been 2 years. I've rebuilt myself. I'm at peace now. Just then, a young nurse peeked into the room. Harper, Lucas is crying. He won't take the bottle. Harper stood without hesitation. Can we talk later? Elias asked, rising to follow her. We'll be working here together on the new project. We're bound to cross paths. This is a hospital, Elias. Let's keep things professional. She paused at the doorway. And do me a favor, stop digging up the past. It hurts less when it stays buried. Elias watched her walk away, her white uniform blending into the bustle of hospital staff. He sat back down, unable to shake the hollow ache in his chest. How had two people who once shared every hope, every heartbreak, come to this, exchanging words like strangers? His phone buzzed. A message from Noel. The revised plans are ready for review. He put the phone down. The plans could wait. In that moment, all he could think about was the weight in his chest and the stirring in him that seeing Harper with the child had awoken, feelings he thought were long buried beneath concrete and deadlines. Later that day, Elias found himself in the office of Marita Yenny, the hospital administrator. Officially, he was there to go over project logistics, but the conversation drifted. It's tragic, she said, referring to the child. They found him wrapped in an old blanket, left inside a cardboard box at the entrance. Thankfully, Harper was the one who found him. She's been taking care of him ever since. What's going to happen to the baby? Elias asked, trying to sound casual. For now, he's in temporary care here. Social services are handling the case. Harper's stepped in until something is decided. She's always had a way with children, Elias whispered. Marita nodded. She's grown so much this past year. Honestly, she's one of the best nurses we have. Elias shifted in his chair, the conversation around him starting to blur. The discussion had veered briefly into something personal, uncomfortably so. She told me something about you, Marita had said, her tone casual. But don't worry, personal stories aren't really what matters here. What matters is how we care. Before he could respond, a sharp knock interrupted them. Harper stepped into the room, a file in hand. Dr. DuPont, I need your signature for. She paused mid-sentence when she saw Elias sitting there. Excuse me, she said quickly, retreating. Come in, Harper, Marita called out. Mr. Callahan was just leaving. Elias had already risen from his seat, but before stepping out, he turned to Harper. How's the baby? He's doing better, she answered, her tone softer now. Took the bottle without a fuss. Vitals are steady. Elias hesitated. Why did you choose the name Lucas? For the first time that day, Harper looked him directly in the eyes. Because it means bringer of light. And that's what he's been to this unit since the moment we found him. Technically, Marita interjected, he hasn't been officially named. Every abandoned child deserves a name, Harper replied firmly. I won't refer to him as Case 47 or the infant from Entrance 3. He's not a file, he's a person. Elias said nothing, but the moment stirred something in him. He remembered old conversations, late at night, when they used to dream up names for children who never came to be. Harper had always lit up during those talks. He straightened his jacket. Please make sure the revised project documents are on my desk by morning, he said, redirecting the mood. With a polite nod, he left the office. But as he walked down the hallway, he stopped in front of the glass window of the neonatal unit. There was Lucas, sleeping peacefully in his tiny crib, oblivious to the chaos of the adult world. A nurse leaned in to check the monitors beside him. Do you know him? The nurse asked, noticing Elias's lingering gaze. No, Elias replied quickly, just passing through. He turned away, but as he made his way toward the exit, his mind kept drifting back, to the cardboard box, to the frayed blanket, to the quiet desperation that might lead someone to walk away from their own child. And then he wondered, maybe there are different kinds of abandonment. Some are loud, others are quieter, invisible. Later that evening, Elias sat in his office, skimming through the latest site plans for the Lanua project. But his mind wasn't cooperating. "There's something I don't understand," he said aloud. "What is it?" Noelle asked, flipping open her notebook. "Why didn't anyone tell me Harper worked at the hospital?" Noelle closed the notebook slowly. "I didn't think it was relevant, sir. You don't usually talk about your personal life, and the staff list we received only included administrators, not the nursing team." Elias rubbed his temples, the events of the day swirling like fog in his mind. "Should we consider moving the project to another facility?" Noelle offered gently. "No," he said firmly. "This hospital is key to the plan." Just then, his phone lit up with a new message from Marita. "We need to go over the neonatal unit in more detail. Can we meet tomorrow?" "Set up a meeting with Dr. Yenny for tomorrow," he told Noelle. "At what time?" "Any time, as long as it doesn't overlap with the nurse's shift change." She glanced at him, noting the unusual weight in his tone. "That's at 3, so 11? He nodded, rising from his chair. "I'm heading home." In the parking lot, just as he was about to unlock his car, his phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from his mother. "So, how did the meeting at the hospital go?" "It was fine," he replied simply. Then a second message followed. "Did you see her?" He froze, his hand still on the door handle. "How do you know?" he typed. Her response came quickly. "The city may be big, Elias, but hearts always find their way to each other." "I still talk to a few people at the hospital," his mother said over the phone. Elias sighed. "Mom, can we not do this right now?" "You never want to talk," she replied gently. "You're just like your father, always hiding behind silence, thinking it protects you. But silence can cut deeper than words." "I'm driving. We'll talk later, okay?" He ended the call, but her words lingered like the fading echo of a wound still tender. As he turned down the familiar street, his gaze landed on the building he and Harper had once called home. On the 7th floor, lights were on. Someone new lived there now. New faces, new stories. He remembered that last night. The apartment was quiet, filled with cardboard boxes and things left unsaid. "We can't keep going like this," Harper had said, her voice low. "We're just coexisting, like strangers, sleeping in separate rooms, avoiding each other." "I'm drowning in deadlines, Harper. The company, the contracts, everything always needs me. But what about us?" The question had hung in the air, never spoken, but heard all the same. The sound of a car horn jolted him back. The light had turned green. Elias stepped on the gas, pulling away from the building and the memories it held. But the ache didn't fade. It simply shifted deeper. In the morning meeting, the architectural model of the new hospital wing dominated the room, a symbol of ambition and hope. Elias walked the investors through every detail. "The extension will cover 5 floors," he explained. "The first is entirely devoted to neonatal and pediatric intensive care." "Why begin with newborns?" one investor asked. Before Elias could answer, Marita Yenny stepped in. "Because that's where the need is most urgent," she said. Just then, Harper entered, holding a stack of files. Elias saw her in his periphery but continued speaking. "There will be 25 state-of-the-art incubators and a separate space reserved for infants who have been abandoned." The room stirred. "Abandoned babies?" one investor repeated, eyebrows raised. "Wouldn't it be wiser to focus on patients who can actually pay?" Harper moved closer to the table. "Excuse me," she said firmly. "Elena." Marita began cautiously. "No, doctor, they need to hear this." She turned to face the investors. "Those babies didn't choose to be left behind. They didn't choose poverty or illness. But they deserve care. We all do. That's what it means to be a hospital, serving more than just profit." One of the investors shifted uncomfortably. "And you are?" "Nurse Solano," she said. "And I've watched infants die because we didn't have space or funding. Is that the business model we want to stand behind?" "Harper, that's enough," Elias said quietly. "Of course," she replied with a tight smile. "Private meetings, private decisions, just like always." Silence followed. Marita cleared her throat. Perhaps a short break would be helpful. As the investors filtered out, only Elias, Harper, and Marita remained. "I'm sorry," Harper said softly, her eyes downcast. "I let my emotions get the better of me." "No need," Elias replied. "Your points were valid." She looked at him surprised. "Honestly, I'd already made provisions. That section of the wing, the one for abandoned infants, it'll be funded separately. It won't rely on investor money." Harper blinked. "Why would you do that?" "Because it's the right thing to do," Elias said, gathering his documents. He paused, then added, and because someone once taught me that every life deserves a chance. With that, he walked out, leaving Harper speechless. Marita gave her a faint, knowing smile. People change, she said quietly. Sometimes all it takes is time or a forsaken child. Harper looked down at the blueprints spread across the table. Her fingers traced the lines that marked Lucas's future room. Later, in the near-empty cafeteria, the two of them sat across from each other. Elias stirred his coffee, but didn't drink it. Harper held her cup close, letting the warmth settle in her palms. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," he said. "I'm not doing this for you," Harper replied. "I'm doing it for the project. I just need to confirm," Harper said, her tone calm but resolute. "Are you really going to move forward with the plan for the abandoned infant's wing?" Elias nodded. "I have everything in order. The proposal, the funding documents. I can show you the files if you want." "But why now, Elias?" she asked, her gaze steady. "Why this sudden change? Does a good deed always need an explanation?" he replied quietly. "With you, there's always a reason. Always a layer beneath the surface." Elias placed his spoon down slowly, the clink against the saucer breaking the silence between them. "Seeing Lucas," he began, "it brought something back, made me question things I've buried for too long." "Please don't use Lucas as a mirror for your guilt," Harper said gently. "He deserves more than that." "I'm not. It's just, watching you care for him, it reminded me of how I always imagined you'd be as a mother, with our child." Her eyes dropped for a moment. The silence between them grew thick again. "When I brought up adoption, do you remember?" Harper asked, her voice low. "You dismissed it, said it wasn't the same, that you wanted your bloodline, your name passed on." "I was a fool." He gave a half-hearted smile. "Still am. The only difference is I'm finally aware of it." Harper took a sip from her now lukewarm coffee. "You know what hurt the most? It wasn't that we fought. We didn't. You just drifted. You replaced dinners with meetings, replaced evenings with late hours at the office." Elias nodded. "Work was my excuse. But the truth is, I was scared. Of what? Of not being enough. Of failing you, like I had before." "Don't," she said quickly. "Don't apologize. It's too late for that." She stood, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "I have to get back. Lucas needs his medication." "Harper, if I truly want to make a difference, if I want this project to mean something, tell me what I need to do." "Then do it," she said, turning to go. "Not for me. Not even for yourself. Do it for them. For the ones who need a chance at life." And with that, she left him alone with a half-empty cup of coffee and thoughts that seemed to multiply with every passing second. Through the cafeteria window, Elias could see the site where the new wing would soon rise. Concrete and steel would take shape there, but he hoped it might also be a place where healing could begin. Perhaps for more than just the children. Back at the office, Carmen's voice buzzed through the intercom. "Your mother's here, sir." He barely had time to register her words before Rosa Callahan swept into the room. Elegant as ever, in a tailored navy suit, her presence as commanding as it was composed. "To what do I owe the visit, Mom?" Elias asked, rising. "Can a mother visit her son without a reason?" she said with a soft smile. "You always have your reasons," he replied knowingly. She sat across from him, placing her handbag neatly beside her. "Marita shared a few things about the hospital project with me." He raised an eyebrow. "Since when are you and Marita in conversation?" "Since the beginning. She was there for me once, a long time ago." Elias frowned slightly. "When?" Rosa's breath caught in her throat. Her voice, when it came, was lower, slower. "When we brought you into our family." The air in the room shifted. Elias felt it like a sudden drop in temperature, though no windows had opened. "What are you saying?" "You're at a turning point in your life," Rosa began gently. "And there are things you deserve to know." "I couldn't carry a child, Elias. Your father and I tried everything, much like you and Harper did. We chose adoption." He stood up abruptly. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because it matters," she said, steady despite the emotion in her voice. "I saw the way you shut down when Harper spoke about adoption, and I wondered, was it because, deep down, you've always sensed something? Or were you afraid that love alone couldn't make a family?" Elias stared at her, his mind whirling. "You are my mother." "Yes," she said, eyes brimming but clear. "And I always have been, just as you would have been a real father to any child you opened your heart to." He dropped back into his chair, the strength leaving his legs. Does Dad know? Of course. He was the one who reminded me. Love builds families, not genetics. Why didn't you tell me sooner? At first, you were so small, fragile. Then later, it just never felt like the right time. Elias's thoughts drifted, replaying memories where he had spoken so proudly of bloodlines, legacy, surnames. How naive those words sounded now. The Callahan name, the legacy, the weight of family bloodlines. Elias murmured, barely above a whisper. Harper always understood it better than I did. Rosa nodded gently. She sees every day what you've struggled to grasp. Love doesn't begin or end with DNA. I need some time, Elias said, rising from his chair. His voice was steady, but something in his eyes had shifted. As he reached the door, Rosa called after him, her tone tender but firm. Don't confuse blood with love, son. From the very moment we held you, your father and I loved you, completely, as if you had always been ours. He paused for a moment, then shook his head faintly. I just need to breathe. He stepped out into the night, letting the cool air hit his face as he wandered through the city without purpose or destination. Somehow, without meaning to, he ended up in the hospital parking lot. From where he stood, he could see the soft glow of the neonatal unit's windows. He didn't need to guess, he knew Harper was in there, probably cradling Lucas, whispering comfort into his fragile world. His phone vibrated in his pocket. A message from Marita. Your mother spoke with me. When you're ready, my door's open. He found Marita still in her office, even though the building had long since quieted for the night. Papers were stacked around her in neat chaos, but her attention turned to him immediately when he entered. Who else knows? Elias asked quietly, standing at the doorway. Just me, she replied. And Dr. Ramirez, he passed away years ago. Not Harper? No, Marita said, her expression softening. I never told her. That wasn't my place. Elias sank into a chair, a wave of fatigue washing over him. All this time? You were a beautiful baby, she said, a faint smile tugging at her lips. I still remember the way Rosa cried when she first held you. She loved you before you ever knew what love meant. And the woman who gave birth to me? She was barely more than a girl. She wanted you to have a life with possibilities, a future she couldn't give. Just like Lucas's mother in a way. Marita glanced toward the hallway, where faint sounds echoed. She sings to him in the evenings, she said. Did you know Harper's applying to adopt Lucas? Elias turned sharply. What? She started the process a few months ago. The final evaluation is next week. But she's doing it alone, Elias said, disbelief still in his voice. Can she even? She can, Marita replied with quiet confidence. She has a steady job, a safe home, glowing references, everything a child needs. She still lives in that apartment, he asked. She bought it, renovated it, the guest room, you know the one? It's now a nursery. Elias closed his eyes briefly, the memory returning in a wave. They had painted that room together once, picked out stars for the ceiling, tiny wooden animals for the shelves. A dream that never had the chance to take root. She was ready, he whispered. And you weren't, Marita added softly. But that doesn't make you unworthy. Just human. She looked at him, eyes kind. Families come in all shapes, Elias. The strongest ones aren't always defined by blood, but by the choice to love. Just then, Harper passed by the doorway. Lucas nestled peacefully in her arms. Elias didn't move, he just watched. He seems calm, Elias said quietly. He is, Marita answered. He's found his person. The question is, have you? Elias stood, his voice filled with a quiet gratitude. Thank you, for keeping the truth safe, for watching over her, for everything. You should head home, Marita smiled. It's been a long day. Outside in the parking lot, Elias paused once more to look up at the window bathed in warm hospital light. He wondered, was this what his father had felt 35 years ago? Standing in front of another hospital, gazing at a child who didn't share his blood but would soon carry his name, his love, his entire heart? Perhaps it had always been that simple. Love, after all, chooses us, if we're brave enough to say yes. Always build for the future. The voice of Elias's father echoed from the old corporate video playing on his laptop, a grainy recording now layered with a different kind of weight. Elias sat alone in his dimly lit office, the glow of the screen flickering across his face. Sir? Noel appeared at the doorway. The contractors are ready to begin demolition at the hospital. They just need your signature. Has the area been cleared? Yes. The The neonatal unit has been moved temporarily to the 3rd floor. He clicked the laptop shut with finality. And Harper? Has Nurse Solano confirmed the transition? She was the one who coordinated it, Noel replied. Said if the babies are safe, everything else is just logistics. Elias offered a faint, almost wistful smile. That sounds like her. Sorry? Nothing. Bring the papers. As he signed, his thoughts drifted back to the conversation with his mother, the truth she'd carried for decades, and the realization that his name, his legacy, was built on love more than blood. His phone buzzed. A message from Harper. We need to review the updated plans. I'm heading to the hospital, he said, rising. When he arrived, he found Harper in the temporary unit, assessing the equipment. Her focus was sharp, her movements brisk. These power lines can't support the load, she said, skipping any greeting. Incubators don't run on good enough, Elias. I know, it's just for now. For you, maybe, but a newborn can't comprehend chaos. That's why I brought this. He unrolled a new set of blueprints. We can reinforce the system immediately. Harper glanced over the layout. When did you draft these? Last night. I couldn't sleep. She looked up at him, sensing there was more beneath the surface. There's something else, Elias said quietly. I found out yesterday that I'm adopted. She froze. My mother, Rosa, and Marita were both there when it happened. All these years I didn't know. And now, Harper asked, still processing. All those times I talked about family, heritage, bloodlines, I didn't know I was repeating a story that was never really mine. Elias, she began. Don't worry. I'm not trying to use this to win back something I lost. I just want to acknowledge that you were right. Harper looked at him, eyes steady. It's been 2 years. I've already made my choice. With Lucas. I know, Elias said, and this time his voice held no tension. And I'm happy for you, for both of you. She searched his face for signs of old intentions, but there were none. Only sincerity. I want to make the right decisions now. For the staff, for the children, for everything I once left behind. She nodded slowly. Then let's start with the electrical grid. The next morning, Elias stood before the medical staff, pointing to the projected plans on the wall. Demolition starts tomorrow, he said. We expect the process to last 3 weeks. During that time, our top priority is patient safety. From the back of the room, Harper raised a question. What if they uncover structural issues? We have contingency plans, he replied calmly. If anything compromises safety, we halt work. Period. Marita watched them from a quiet corner of the room, noting how the energy between them had changed, no longer fractured, but grounded. Elias spoke with focus, not ego. Something in him had shifted. After the meeting, as the staff dispersed, Marita approached. The social worker is coming today, she said gently. I know, Elias replied, gathering his papers. Harper appeared beside them, her composure slightly frayed. How do you know that? He's been helping prepare, Marita answered. Every night for the past 3 evenings, he stayed late organizing documents, making sure everything's in order. Harper turned to Elias. You've been involved? I knew her, he said, but now it feels different. Different how? She asked softly. He didn't look at her, just stared down the hallway where sunlight filtered in through high windows. Not better, not worse, just clearer. Like seeing something again for the first time and realizing you finally understand it. Before she could respond, a quiet knock echoed down the corridor. A knock interrupted their conversation. Noel appeared in the doorway. Mr. Callahan, the site team discovered something during the initial phase of demolition. Elias stood up, alert. What kind of discovery? You should see for yourself. At the construction zone, a group of workers huddled around an exposed section of wall. A foreman gestured toward the bricks, now visible under stripped plaster. It's part of the original structure, he explained. Dates back more than a century. This used to be a convent before the hospital was ever built. Will this affect the current plans? Elias asked, stepping closer to run his hand across the aged surface. We'd need to redesign the entire extension if we're going to preserve it. And the delay? At least 2 months, maybe more. Elias studied the time-worn wall. The rough bricks seemed to whisper stories of healing, of hands that once built with devotion, of time itself. Proceed, he said firmly. Revise the designs, the wall stays. But sir, the added cost. There are things that deserve to endure, Elias said, cutting in. This hospital has a history. Let's respect it. From the hallway above, Harper watched the exchange quietly. Their eyes met for a brief second, and she offered him a small nod, silent approval, before disappearing back into the neonatal unit. Inside, the air was tense. "Lucas has a fever," Harper said, leaning over his incubator. "It's at 39 degrees. Outside, darkness blanketed the city. The sound of heavy machinery had faded for the night. Dr. Suarez stood nearby, reviewing the chart. "The antibiotics should be working," he said, but Harper's instincts were screaming otherwise. "Something's wrong," she murmured. "His breathing, it's too fast." Then, alarms pierced the air. "He's seizing," Harper shouted. Chaos exploded. Nurses rushed in, orders shouted across the unit. Machines beeped wildly. On the lower floor, Elias was reviewing structural adjustments when the loudspeaker crackled to life. "Code blue. Neonatal unit. Code blue." He didn't hesitate. Sprinting up the stairs 2 at a time, he burst onto the floor. Through the glass, he saw her, Harper, calm yet urgent, delivering chest compressions to the tiny baby clinging to life. "Come on, little one," she whispered. "Don't let go. Stay with me." The minutes dragged like hours. Then, a beep. Another. The monitor steadied. A heartbeat returned. Harper stepped out, exhausted, her shoulders slumped. She stopped short when she saw Elias waiting. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice frayed. "I heard the code," he replied, breath still uneven. "Is he?" "He's stable. For now." Elias dropped into a nearby chair, still shaken. Silently, he slipped off his jacket and draped it over Harper's shoulders. "The social worker," she began. "He'll approve," Elias interrupted. "He'd be a fool not to." Harper looked at him, unsure. "How can you say that? I saw you in there." "That's not enough." "No, let me finish." He met her eyes. "You are, without question, the best mother Lucas could ever hope for. I say that as someone who knows what it means to be loved by someone who chose to be a parent." Harper blinked, caught off guard by the rawness in his voice. Then, almost suddenly, she exclaimed, "The flowers." "What?" "In the garden outside, the same golden blooms I used to keep on our balcony. They're the exact ones." "Oh," Elias said, scratching the back of his neck. "The landscaper asked me what to plant, and, I don't know, it just came to me." "Thank you," she said softly, "for remembering. Some memories, they deserve to live on." The silence that followed wasn't tense. It was calm, honest. "I need to get back to Lucas," she said, slipping off his jacket and folding it gently. "Of course. And Harper." She paused at the door. "Everything's going to be all right," he said. "For him. And for you." She nodded once, quietly, and walked back into the unit. Elias lingered for a moment longer, standing outside the glass, watching her hold Lucas as if nothing else in the world mattered. And maybe, in that moment, nothing else did. Through the glass, Harper gently adjusted the blanket wrapped around Lucas. Outside, the sunflowers at the hospital entrance cast golden reflections against the window pane, silent witnesses to a new bond forming between two souls who once shared a life, now learning how to rebuild something entirely new. "The adoption's been approved," Marita announced as she stepped into Elias's temporary office. He looked up from the site plans he'd been reviewing. "Harper knows already," she added. "They'll make the official announcement this afternoon. As of today, Lucas will be her son, in every legal sense." Elias set the plans aside. They deserve this. She also asked for a redesign of the waiting area in the new wing. "Why?" She said parents need a place to stay close to their children without interfering with care. That the waiting is often the hardest part. "I've already started making adjustments," Elias replied. "I added a section with recliners and a compact kitchen for long nights." Marita smiled. "You've changed." "No," he said thoughtfully. "I just see things differently now." A knock on the door interrupted them. It was Harper. "Mind if I come in?" she asked politely. "Not at all," Marita said, rising. "Actually, I was just leaving." Once the room was quiet again, Harper approached the desk. Elias handed her a folder. "The social worker gave me the final documents this morning." "Thank you," she said softly, flipping through the pages. Then she paused. "I have a question." "Go ahead." "The wall?" she said, "the old one. I know preserving it is causing delays. Why keep it?" Elias stood and walked toward the window. From there they could see the partially demolished building and the historic wall that stood untouched, weathered, but still upright. "When I was a boy," Elias began, "my father brought me here. He pointed to this hospital and said, 'Son, we don't just build structures, we build places where life happens.' I never understood what he meant until now." And what do you think he meant? Harper asked. That some things are more valuable than timelines and budgets. Some stories deserve to stay standing. She moved to stand beside him. Lucas is doing better, by the way. His fever's gone. I know. I read every update, Elias said quietly, because no matter how things change between us, what matters to you still matters to me. Harper looked at him, eyes searching. The wall, Elias continued, reminds me of our relationship. In what way? It's old. Weathered. It's seen change after change, and it's still standing. Different, yes, but not broken. There was a long pause. No, Harper finally said. It's not broken. Maybe it never really was. He turned to the door. The adoption ceremony is Friday, he said. If you'd like me to be there. I would, Harper replied. He nodded, then quietly left, leaving behind an invitation that, months ago, would have been unthinkable. The social services office smelled faintly of aged paperwork and burnt coffee. Harper sat in stillness, as Mrs. Ramirez, the social worker, reviewed the documents one last time. Well, she said, looking up at last, everything seems to be in perfect order. We just need your final signature here. Harper picked up the pen. Her hand trembled slightly. This is the moment you've been waiting for, Mrs. Ramirez said gently. Are you certain? Life as a single mother isn't easy. Harper smiled, calm and radiant. I've never been more certain of anything. There's just one more thing, the social worker added. We received an additional letter of recommendation. Harper blinked. From whom? Mrs. Ramirez slid the envelope across the desk. For Mr. Callahan. He says, Mrs. Ramirez read aloud, you are the most capable person I know to take on the role of a mother. Harper sat still, the pen hovering above the signature line. She hadn't known. He never told her. But somehow it didn't surprise her. It wasn't something he needed to share with you, the social worker continued. But the letter made a strong impression. It's not every day someone in his position takes the time to write something so personal. Harper pressed the pen down and signed, her eyes blinking back tears. Lucas Solano, Mrs. Ramirez said with a soft smile. That's a beautiful name. It belonged to my grandfather, Harper replied. He was a man who believed family wasn't about blood, it was about love. Back at the hospital, Elias stood near the site, giving quiet instructions to the contractors. Why'd you do it? Harper's voice came from behind. He turned, a little surprised to see her. Do what? The letter. Elias folded the blueprint in his hands. Because it was the right thing. Because you deserve this. You didn't have to. I know, he said simply. I didn't do it to help you. I did it because it's true. Their eyes met for a moment. Around them, the clang of tools and machinery filled the space, and yet for a beat it was quiet between them. Friday, Harper finally said. The ceremony is at 11. I know. I've already taken the day off. She nodded and turned to go, but stopped before stepping away. Elias, she said. He looked up. Thank you. One word, that was all. But it lingered in the air long after she disappeared down the corridor toward the neonatal unit, where Lucas was waiting for her. Elias stood in the silence she left behind, thinking about all the letters he never wrote, the truths left unsaid, and how sometimes love means letting go, and still standing close enough to catch someone if they fall. The night before the adoption ceremony, Elias couldn't sleep. From his apartment window, the lights of Lima stretched across the skyline like constellations. Then his phone rang. It was Noel. Sir, there's an emergency at the hospital. What happened? A water pipe burst in the temporary neonatal unit. Part of the electrical system's been compromised. Elias was already putting on his jacket. I'm on my way. When he arrived, the scene was chaotic. Nurses were evacuating the room. Harper was in the center of it all, pushing an incubator with steady urgency. The emergency generator is failing, she said. Lucas and 2 other infants need constant power. We're moving them to the south wing, but it's already near capacity, not enough power points. Elias scanned the hallway, thinking fast. Then his eyes lit up. My temporary office, he said. It has its own backup generator for the construction systems. Are you sure? Absolutely. Let's do it. For the next several hours, they worked side by side, rerouting cables, securing machines, and making sure every child was safe. By 3 a.m., everything had settled. The room hummed quietly with power. Harper sat down beside Lucas's incubator, exhaustion etched into her face. In a few hours, she whispered, brushing a finger along the glass, he'll officially be mine. He already is, Elias said gently. The papers just make it official. She looked at him, the soft glow of the monitors dancing in her eyes. Do you remember those nights? She asked. When we used to stay up talking about the future, about kids. I do, he said quietly, but it's okay, that was another lifetime. Lucas stirred in his sleep, making tiny gestures with his fingers. He moves like you, Elias said with a soft smile. When he sleeps, he frowns the same way you used to. Babies learn from who cares for them, Harper replied. Just like I did, from my parents. And I did, Elias added, from mine. They sat together, watching Lucas breathe in peaceful rhythm. The soft blips of the monitor felt like fireflies in the dark, quiet, constant, hopeful. You should rest, Elias said at last. Tomorrow's a big day. Will you stay with him? She asked. I will, he promised. Go with peace. Harper stood slowly and gave one last look toward her son. Their son. Then she walked down the hallway, leaving Elias at Lucas's side, where he would stay until the first light of morning. At the doorway, Elias paused and glanced back. Sometimes, he murmured to himself, things don't unfold the way we plan, but that doesn't mean they're wrong. He watched as Harper disappeared into the softly lit corridors of the hospital, Lucas in her arms, and was left standing in the quiet realization that love often reveals itself in ways we never expect. Subtle, surprising, and deeply real. Morning arrived with a kind of quiet clarity. Sunlight spilled through the courthouse windows, casting soft beams across the floor of the ceremony room. Inside, a gentle buzz filled the space. Doctors, nurses, close friends, and Harper's relatives took their seats, anticipation glimmering in their eyes. Marita settled into a seat beside Elias, who sat near the back. Feeling nervous? She asked with a smile. What for? He replied, almost convincing himself. This day isn't about me. No, she said gently, but it marks an ending and a beginning. The doors opened, all conversations faded. Harper stepped into the room, carrying Lucas against her chest. He wore a white outfit so soft and delicate, he looked like a tiny beam of light. The social worker stood beside her, guiding her through the final steps. Please rise, the judge announced, beginning the formal proceedings. As Elias stood with the others, his mind wandered for a moment to a courtroom from long ago. He was 12. That was the day his parents told him the truth about his own story. His biggest fear back then hadn't been the fact that he was adopted. It was the thought of whether he could still call them mom and dad. Of course you can, his father had said. Love doesn't need an explanation. The judge's voice brought him back to the present. Harper Solano Moniel, he said clearly, do you willingly accept all legal and moral responsibilities that come with becoming Lucas's mother? Yes, Harper answered, her voice unwavering. I do. With the authority granted to me under the law, I hereby declare this adoption finalized. Lucas Solano is now, fully and forever, your son. Applause broke across the room like a warm embrace. Harper held Lucas close, tears streaming down her cheeks as she whispered words only he could hear. Elias rose quietly and made his way toward the exit. In the hallway, Rosa waited. Leaving already? She asked. My part is done, Elias said. And what exactly do you think your part was? He turned his gaze back to the ceremony room, where Harper was surrounded by love and laughter. To understand, he said slowly, that sometimes loving someone means stepping away, letting them have what they need, even if it's not with you. Rosa reached for his hand. And so the cycle continues. Just as your father and I once stood in that place, watching you become ours. Elias nodded, his heart full. He stepped into the elevator, carrying with him the image of Harper and Lucas, two souls bound not by blood but by choice, and a love that asked for nothing in return. 2 weeks later, Elias stood in front of a team of contractors at the hospital's new pavilion. In 2 weeks, we open this wing, he said. And I want it perfect. Everyone nodded as he reviewed the final touches. The preserved century-old wall stood proudly within the sleek, modern architecture, a symbol of legacy seamlessly merged with the future. Carmen, Elias called. I heard Nurse Solano requested to be the first to tour it. She did, Carmen replied. She wants to make sure everything is right. For the babies, Elias smiled softly. Then schedule her tour for tomorrow. Back in the temporary unit, Harper was dressing Lucas in a soft new onesie. The little boy had grown stronger and brighter in just a few short weeks. Curious eyes, quick smiles, and the kind of laughter that could light up a room. Ready for your big day tomorrow? Marita asked, stepping into the room. I need to see it first, Harper replied. Every corner, every connection, the airflow, the lighting, it has to be perfect. It already is, Marita said. Elias made sure of that. Harper lifted Lucas into her arms. He squealed with delight, tiny fists waving in the air. It feels different now, she said. How so? More finished, more real, like we finally found our place. Their movements had settled into a quiet rhythm. Marita watched as Harper folded a soft blanket into Lucas's bag, her motions smooth and practiced. There was something about the way she moved, with calm certainty, that revealed not just routine, but love earned and grown over time. Sometimes, the doctor mused, the most meaningful bonds are the ones that take time to grow. You mean, the kind that transform, Harper replied. Exactly. Marita nodded. Like this hospital, or that old wall we refused to tear down, now standing at the heart of something completely new. Harper turned to the window where the gleaming lines of the new pavilion met seamlessly with the time-worn stone. Tomorrow's the big unveiling, she said quietly. Nervous? Not nervous. Just curious to see how far everything and everyone has come. In Harper's arms, Lucas yawned, blissfully unaware of the weight of the day ahead. You should go rest, Marita suggested. Tomorrow will be full. Harper nodded, and she and Lucas stepped into the corridor, walking through halls shaped by history, toward a future that was still unfolding. By morning, sunlight spilled across the polished windows of the new pavilion. Guests were beginning to arrive. Hospital board members, investors, doctors, nurses. The energy in the air felt both ceremonial and sincere. It's beautiful, Harper whispered, cradling Lucas as she stood before the completed structure. The old stone blended with new glass in a way that told a story, one of resilience and hope. Everything functioning as expected? Elias asked as he approached. Better, Harper replied. The incubators are top tier, and the parent space? It was your idea, but you took it further than I ever imagined. Lucas reached out from Harper's arms, grabbing at Elias's tie. He laughed, caught off guard, and gently took the child into his arms. He's got a firm grip, Elias remarked, rocking him carefully. Just like his mother. Marita chimed in as she joined them. Time for your speech, she added. Elias handed Lucas back to Harper and stepped forward to the podium. The crowd quieted. This building, he began, isn't just about walls and equipment. It's a promise to every child born within these walls, to every parent who waits and hopes just outside them. It's a space where life begins, where healing starts, where love takes root. He paused, his gaze resting momentarily on the preserved brick wall behind him. My father used to tell me that we don't just build structures, we build the spaces where life unfolds. I never understood that fully, until now. His eyes briefly met Harper's across the room. This pavilion is a bridge between history and the future, between tradition and innovation, between what we carry with us and what we choose to create next. Just then, Lucas let out a small giggle, breaking the solemnity of the moment. The audience chuckled softly. And that, Elias smiled, is the sound of hope. That's what we're building here. With that, he took the ceremonial scissors and cut the ribbon. Applause filled the space. Harper walked over with Lucas in her arms. That was quite the speech, she said. I had good inspiration, Elias replied, glancing toward his parents in the crowd. Harper smiled, then looked down at Lucas. Did you know we'll need godparents for his baptism? Elias turned to her, surprised. Think about it, she said simply, before turning to greet guests eager to meet the boy who had brought so many lives together. 1 week later, they sat across from each other in the quiet hospital cafeteria, coffee cooling between them. Are you sure about this? Elias asked, stirring his cup slowly. Absolutely, Harper replied without hesitation. You've changed, Elias, not just in the way you lead, but in the way you listen, care, show up. And Lucas, he notices. The way he beams at you, Marita said softly, her voice almost drowned in the quiet hum of the new pavilion. Around them, the halls pulsed with energy, nurses on the move, doctors consulting quietly, families holding hands and holding breath. Life, as always, flowed forward. What will your family think? Elias asked, watching Harper cradle Lucas near the window. They already know, she replied with a smile. And they're proud. They love him. And Marita, he added with a glance toward their longtime friend. She's agreed to be the godmother. Elias beamed. Then it's perfect. Harper turned to him. "And what about you?" "I think," he said, "it would be an honor." She nodded slowly, content. "The baptism is set for next month," she added. Elias looked around at the wing they'd built together. "Thank you," he said, "for everything. For this place, for reminding me that family can take more than one shape." "And thank you," Harper replied, "for helping it grow." They stood from the table, Harper to return to her shift, Elias to greet the next round of investors. But before they parted, Harper paused. "Do you ever wonder," she asked, "how it all ended up like this?" Elias smiled gently. "Sometimes we have to lose ourselves to rediscover who we are. Just like the old wall, finding its place in something new." "Exactly," she said. "Not everything old has to be torn down. Some things just need a new purpose." Their smiles lingered longer than their words, before each turned down a separate corridor, paths no longer identical but always intertwined. Between them, the ancient wall stood silent and steadfast, a quiet witness to a story that hadn't ended, only changed into something gentler, more honest, more alive. 1 year later, the neonatal unit was filled with motion and light. 3 new incubators had arrived that morning, and Harper was reviewing their installation. Lucas, now a bright, curious toddler, sat in a playpen in Marita's office, stacking blocks and humming softly to himself. When Harper stepped into the room, he lit up. "Mama," he squealed. "Just a minute, my love," she laughed, signing the final paperwork. At the door, Elias appeared with a brightly wrapped package in hand. "Am I late?" he asked. "Right on time," Marita replied, already smiling. Lucas crawled eagerly to his godfather, who scooped him up with ease, a gesture no longer uncertain, but practiced and full of affection. "I can't believe it's already been a year," Harper said, setting her papers aside. "Time moves fast," Marita added. "Just like the hospital's growth, we're already facing a waiting list for transfers." "That's actually why I'm here," Elias said. "The board just approved the expansion another floor. We're building upward." Harper's eyes lit up. "With the same design?" "With improvements," Elias confirmed. The team's suggestions were too good to ignore. Lucas, now wriggling with anticipation, reached for the gift. "Go ahead," Elias chuckled, setting him down on the desk. Lucas tore through the wrapping with toddler enthusiasm. Inside was a small toy stethoscope. "Just like Mommy's," Elias said, "and like the one your godfather used to listen to the heartbeat of an old wall during construction." Marita grinned. "That wall has a stronger pulse than we ever imagined." Harper gently placed the stethoscope in Lucas's ears. "Go ahead," she whispered. "Listen to the hospital's heartbeat." Lucas giggled and pressed the toy to the desk, to the walls, to his mother's chest. Outside, the afternoon sun bathed the pavilion in golden light. The old wall, now part of the modern design, stood like a scar healed into beauty, a testament that not everything broken stays broken, that some things must be cracked open to grow stronger, to let the light in. And in that office, surrounded by those who understood that love comes in many forms, Lucas listened, his small hands seeking the rhythm of his story. A story only just beginning. From the bottom of our hearts, thank you for walking with us through this journey, one woven with love, loss, healing, and hope. Your presence, your quiet listening, your open hearts have meant more than words can ever express. Stories like this are not just told, they are felt. And it is you who gave this story its heartbeat. We hope that somewhere along the way, a line made you pause, a moment stirred something within you, or a truth found its way into your own story. Because that's the magic of connection. It turns stories into mirrors and words into warmth. Thank you for allowing us to be part of your time, your thoughts, and perhaps your healing. This may be the end of one tale, but the beginning of many more.